Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Off the Tube and AP European History Distance Learning. So this week we've been looking at the intellectual movements that have been challenging traditional authority in Europe from the period of 1648 to 1815, and namely the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. We've been looking at how these thinkers, largely through the use of gathering data, using logic and reasoning, are beginning to tear away at the foundations that were laid during the Middle Ages. They were tearing away and mistrusting the Church's explanation for natural events, and then philosophers were then taking that idea from the scientific revolution and then applying that to society. Well, as we're looking at this incredible time of progress, as you see humans really seeming like there's no end to human capability, and there's this time where you're learning so much and we're developing so much, and it seems like perfection and progress is just so close to the human fingertips. Uh, we have to always remind ourselves that while a lot of things are changing, some things are also staying the same. So for this supplemental assignment, you're actually going to be taking the role of a historian, and you're going to be looking at different thinkers, theologians, philosophers' response to a single event that really shook the confidence of all of Europe. In 1755, there was an earthquake in Lisbon, one of the capitals of these European states. Now, Portugal had been taken over by Spain, but either way, still one of the thriving cities, these cities right on the coast of the Atlantic, made wealthy by trade, a hub of the Catholic Church. I mean, this is one of those places that seemingly should be untouchable. On an All Saints' Day, which is November 1st, in 1755, that place was flattened by a massive earthquake and then a subsequent fire that, like I said, destroyed much of the city. And for many Enlightenment philosophers and scientists, this was a baffling thing. How could this happen? How is this a possibility? How could something so tragic occur to a society that was getting such a hold and control over nature? And so you're going to be looking at specifically the way that different thinkers responded to this event and how they explained those natural events. And in order to do so, you're going to be using a set of documents, and you can see here, I've got the set of documents open right here, and you're going to be answering, essentially going through this handout. Now, you've probably read my post already for this weekend, and you know that the AP exam this spring is going to be a document-based question. The College Board is going to give you 5 primary sources, one of which will be visual. You're going to be, they're going to give you a prompt, and you're going to have to read through those documents, analyze them closely, and then use them in order to respond to some sort, to the prompt in an essay. And so what I wanted to start doing this week is to begin practicing the skills that are necessary. Now, again, you know how to write an essay. You understand how to contextualize. You understand how to write a thesis. You understand how to use evidence in order to prove an argument. You understand how to explain your argument and analysis statement. And you understand how to do a synthesis statement, kind of broadening your argument to include either other places or that same place in another time period. What a DBQ then does is it adds the skill of document analysis to that essay. And so what I wanted to start doing is really practicing that skill of document analysis. Anytime that you're reading a primary source in history, you have to remember that you are reading it from a 21st century perspective. You are not reading it in the context for the purpose, for the reason why the author wanted to write it. So in order to take ourselves out of it a little bit, to remove our own biases, there's an acronym, because what good history class would ever be without a document analysis acronym, that we are going to use in order to help us understand these documents better. And you can see that acronym outlined in this whole column here, and that is HIPPO. And what HIPPO stands for is H stands for historical context. What is the context of this document's been written? What's been going on both in European history in general and in whatever specific area this document was written in? The I stands for intended audience. Who is supposed to read this document? Who is the person that was, or the people group that was supposed to be looking at it or reading it or just receiving this document. Because again, you definitely you definitely word things differently when you send me an email versus when you send a text message or a DM or a snapgram to your friends. The first P stands for point of view. Very important in understanding who the author is. What is their job? What is their gender? What is their either philosophical belief or religious belief? What is their social status? What are all the things that make up an individual's identity? Because those usually are going to impact the way that they see the world, and then therefore the way that they are going to talk about or write about or paint about or take a picture of the world. The second P stands for purpose. What is the author trying to do here? Is the author trying to inform? Is the author trying to persuade? Is the author trying to just simply entertain? Is the author trying to just state their opinion without any sort of persuasion? What is the purpose of the document? And then this O stands for outside information. Now, all of these things are things that you are going to be tested on in this DBQ. In order to get full credit for at least 2 to 3 of the documents, you are going to have to talk about the HIP for 3 of the documents. You can talk about either the historical context or intended audience or point of view or purpose. And so practicing that skill to be able to do it in an essay is a great start. The College Board also has modified their rubric slightly, and they are actually going to be testing you on whether or not you can add 2 pieces of outside information, things that you know from European history that are not in the document but still help to prove your argument. So something that you'll be thinking about from your own knowledge. So again, these are things that I'm going to ask that you go through as you read each of these documents. I want you to do a HIPPO. And so I figured we'd do the first document together. One of the great things is the fact that most of the documents are going to be written around 1755. And so when you think about 1756, the historical context is, of course, going to be, for most of these documents, the Lisbon earthquake. It's going to be people's response to it. Again, as we get a little bit further, you're going to realize this is a Catholic perspective. So 1756, we're looking at way after the Reformation, almost 200 years after the Reformation. But at this point in time, you still have the Index of Forbidden Books. You still have the Jesuit missionaries preventing Protestantism. And you still have inquisitions going on at this point in time, which is kind of mind-boggling, the fact that the inquisitions were going on for so long. And so this is just the historical context of what this document has been written. Who is the intended audience? It seems like in the first document here, or the first sentence here, you see it says, "Learn, O Lisbon, the destroyers of our houses, palaces, and churches." Seems like the Catholic parishioners in Lisbon are supposed to read this document. Now here's where we get to the point of view. Now you don't know who Gabriel Malagrida is, but this gentleman is actually a Jesuit priest. Now I know that because I read a little bit more in this text that I actually got the documents from. Most of the other authors you're going to actually know. They'll be in chapter 17. But this guy is a Jesuit missionary, which means we know he's educated, we know he is Catholic, we know that he's a male. All of these things are going to go into the point of view, and especially as you start to look at this document, you're going to see the point of view has a major impact for how he sees the explanation for the Lisbon earthquake. What is the purpose? The purpose is to get the people of Lisbon to repent of their sins, so God doesn't punish them. So again, we're looking at this. This is what I call the beginnings of a HIP check. Now, when we get to the HIP check, I'll teach you exactly how to use this information. But for now, I just want you to practice gathering it, writing it down, and getting used to seeing it. Now, we think of outside information. At this point in time, you know that the Catholic Church is still trying to, still has a hold over the Iberian Peninsula. The kings of Spain and the Habsburg um, um, territories of Spain and Austria-Hungary are still closely aligned with Catholicism. And especially we know that the Catholic Church is still being used as a tool of absolutist monarchs. And something that's an outside information that I know, again, actually goes back to what we used for the historical context. One of the things that's going to prove that some people are continuing to use faith as their explanation for things is going to be the fact that you see Jesuit orders setting up educational institutions and teaching scientific advancements such as the Copernican system, the heliocentric worldview is what I'm essentially looking at. So again, as you're looking at this document, I've read it over. I haven't necessarily read it very closely, but before I really got into it, I really wanted to look at then what was the historical context, what was the intended audience, the point of view, purpose, and any outside information that I know that could help me understand this document better. So I want you to go through and do all of the hippos for the documents that are there. There are 5 documents that I have provided for you. So again, I want you to go through and do the hippo for each of the 5 documents. Now, the other step to this is to then explain how does this philosopher rationalize these natural events. So when I say the natural events, I mean the earthquake. So as I read through this document, right, and I read things like, as for the dead, what a great harvest sinful souls such disasters send to hell. It is scandalous to pretend that the earthquake was just a natural event. For if that be true, there is no need to repent and to try to avert the wrath of God, and not even the devil himself could invent a false idea more likely to lead us all to irreparable ruin. I mean, it seems like what this person believed is that the Lisbon earthquake was a result of the sinful natures of the citizens of Lisbon. He believes God sent this earthquake to punish the people and to cause those who survive to repent and follow God again. I mean, that would be the explanation. Now again, our guiding prompt for this whole thing is to analyze the extent to which European intellectual thought changed from 1550 to 1750. So when we're thinking about how much has it changed, well, at this point in document 1, there's zero change at all, because we have evidence of somebody who in the middle of the Enlightenment, I mean, we're talking 40 years away from the French Revolution here, but in the middle of the Enlightenment is still holding on to the idea that natural events are directly influenced by God. This is not a natural explanation. This is not a plate tectonics just shifted and you can see the shelf actually just moved, therefore causing the... None of that has been added into. It is an act of God that has been brought about through divine intervention. So that shows me, well, European intellectual thought hasn't really changed. Now, of course, you're going to be reading other documents, and subsequent documents are going to be by maybe some other religious thinkers, like this one is John Wesley. Another document is going to be by Voltaire. Ooh, have fun with that one. That's one of my favorite documents in this whole set. And then a wonderful little tit for tat with Rousseau versus Voltaire. Ooh, intellectual banter. Ooh, what a fun little document set I have provided for you guys. And then lastly, you're going to be looking at David Hume, who is of course going to be one of the most famous empiricists of the Enlightenment. So again, what I want you to look at is to what extent did intellectual thought change from 1550 to 1750 as you think about these thinkers and these philosophers, these theologians, how they're responding to this Lisbon earthquake. How do we see European intellectual thought changing or staying the same? And of course, whenever you see this, analyze the extent. You want to know, is it somewhat or is it mostly? So again, not only is this a fun investigation into how philosophers responded to a specific event, but this is also an opportunity for you to practice your DBQ skills. Because I know many of you are planning on taking the AP European History exam, and I know some of you are also planning on taking the AP US History exam. So I want you to be practicing DBQ document analysis so that you are all set and ready to go for that exam. Until next time, Oftedal out.